Welcome back to Roots and Realities, where we dive into all things marketing and motherhood. I am your host, Emma Hushka, founder and CEO of Fiddle Leaf Marketing, and I am so excited about today's guest, who I've had the pleasure of connecting with through a local Pacific Northwest group that elevates small business owners through community, connection, and creativity. Shout out, we elevate. After I first met Kelsey, I've been so interested in hearing more about her work, and I am really excited to bring that conversation to our listeners today. Kelsey Whittaker believes women deserve better than generic health advice and another reminder just to take care of ourselves. As a national board certified health and wellness coach, functional nutrition expert, and founder of Lionheart Health Coaching, she helps busy women understand what's really driving symptoms like fatigue, burnout, brain fog, stubborn weight changes, and feeling like they don't recognize themselves anymore. Drawing on more than a decade in senior healthcare, advanced training, and functional nutrition and behavior change in her own experience navigating career, motherhood, and the mental load of everyday life, Kelsey helps women connect the dots between chronic stress, blood sugar, inflammation, hormones, and sustainable lifestyle habits. Her approach blends evidence-based science with real-life practicality, empowering women to stop chasing quick fixes and start making confident, informed decisions about their health. Kelsey is passionate about helping women build health that lasts, not just for today, but for the decades ahead. Because longevity isn't simply about living longer, it's about having the energy, strength, and vitality to fully enjoy the life you're building. Kelsey, thank you so much for being here, and welcome to Roots and Realities.
Well, thank you, Emma. I appreciate the warm welcome. I'm excited to be here today.
Awesome. I can't wait to get into this. As I mentioned when we were talking before, ever since I first met you and heard about what you did, I was like, I have to talk to her. And I'm glad I waited to do it with this so that I can share that with everyone else who I know there's just so many women that are experiencing, what we're going to get into today. So to start us off, can you tell me what led you into this work and what made you want to focus specifically on moms?
Yeah. Well, and again, thank you for having me. I felt the same way after I met you. I love the way that you are so passionate about supporting mom-owned businesses and how hard we work as working moms. It's a special group of people, we all are. So I'm excited to be here. My background, as you heard in my bio, I spent 13 years in the senior healthcare industry, not necessarily at bedside, but actually in the marketing seat. So I honestly, one of my favorite things that I did was telling stories of older adults. And so I would tell the stories of these 80 and 90-year-olds who were fishing and hiking and volunteering and playing with their grandkids, all these really vibrant things they were still doing in their lives. And then at the same time, I was working with our clinical team and preparing tools and resources for those other 80 and 90-year-olds who were dealing with multiple chronic diseases. And so it had me kind of step back and think, well, what's the difference between these two different sets of older adults, the thriving, active seniors and the really sick ones? And that's where kind of the concept of longevity and health span really started to come into play. I think sometimes people think of longevity and they think, well, I don't really want to live over 100 years old. That seems like a lot. But it's more a matter of this idea of health span. And so it's not just the years in your life, but the vibrancy that you have in those years, the energy that you have to show up for the things that you love with the people that you love. So I kind of started chasing that a little bit. And, I absolutely loved my career in corporate marketing. I loved the people that I worked with, but my season of life started to change alongside it. So I had a kid, a pandemic rolled through. I had another kid after that, and I started to really feel the effects of the corporate grind. I was in a role where I had to be butt in the seat 8 to 5. My daycare was only open 8 to 5, so do that math. It was complicated, and that grind really started to get to me over time. And I finally realized I'm not just busy, I am chronically stressed. There is no shutoff valve anymore. And I remember thinking, is this just what it's supposed to be like? Is this the life of a working mom, that if I want a career and kids, I just have to be stressed about it? And I thought there has to be another way. And so, with the support of my husband and my family, I made the decision to step away from my corporate career. And I was in the midst of looking for my next step. And at that time, life threw an unexpected turn my way. And my brother died unexpectedly in an accident. And while his death was not health related, it was another personal, now very personal reminder of why longevity and health span are so important, why it is so important to take care of ourselves while we're here, and to really live this full, vibrant life with the years that we are given. And so that's what led me to the work that I'm doing today. I started and founded Lionheart Health Coaching. I work primarily with women, and I'm really passionate about helping women have enough energy to show up for the things that they love and do the things that they love with the people that they love, especially working moms who are working so hard to build this life for themselves. I want them to be able to show up for it and be fully present for it and truly enjoy it. So that's what's landed me here today. And again, I'm really excited about our conversation as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Just such an incredible story and beautiful reason for your why. And like, that's exactly why I wanted to do this podcast, is to bring those type of stories, that it's just such a personal reason. And, you walked through so many that, are your reason and your passion, and who better to help support women in navigating these challenges than someone that's been through, them themselves, and kind of led to a lot of your decision. What did you want to be different for women when you first started doing this? You kind of touched on that of like, just probably not experiencing what you did, right? Of like, can I even do this? Is this what I have to accept as a working mom? But like, what was that big, kind of click or whatever it is for you that you wanted to be different for women when you started?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that as women, and just in this modern day and age, we have access to an abundance of information, right? So you hop on Instagram or TikTok or Google or now ChatGPT, whatever, you name it, you have access to information. So if you're feeling something, if you're feeling that fatigue, that bloating, that burnout, you're searching for some kind of an answer. And there are answers out there, but there's an abundance of information. And at some point, it just starts to sound like noise. And at some point, it's very generic. Even when you hear it from a friend might say, hey, this worked great for me. Go check it out. Well, that friend is not you. And so I really wanted my work to be different in that way, that women could kind of walk away from the generic advice and really hone in on what it is that they need. And so that makes my work very personal. I don't have scripts for this work. I don't have, just a box of answers. I have very personalized guidance and direction and protocols. I work in hand with a physician so that we can offer comprehensive lab testing. As many working moms know, data can be really important. That's the same case in your health too. And so when you have some health data to back up your decisions, you have more clear guidance for where you're going. So I really wanted my work to be less generic, a lot more personalized. And so that's what I'm offering.
Yeah, I love it. And just like you said, there's just so many things out there that you can see on the internet. And I can't even imagine how many women have tried, whatever that next trend or thing, like you said, their friend has, or they saw on TikTok, and then getting frustrated, right? And then like probably just thinking it's hopeless because it's like, well, I've tried everything, or I've tried all these specific things, but it's not been necessarily what's best for them. So I love that custom approach. Let's get into the mental load. So let's just dive in. How do you describe the mental load to someone maybe hearing about it for the first time?
Yes, the mental load. So when I tried to think about what is my personal definition for the mental load, and it's really twofold, right? It's this idea are constantly thinking about and not only running life, you're anticipating life too. So it's this constant chatter. It's this invisible workload in the back of your mind that is, how do I run life and how do I anticipate what's next? Because as working moms, we kind of want to stay 5 steps ahead of everything, right? We want to be prepared for anything that could come our way. So this might look like you're standing and washing your dishes and you're thinking about that email that you forgot to send today. And then you're like rehearsing how you're going to write it the next morning, or rehearsing some kind of meeting you have the next day. It could be while you're putting your kids to sleep, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I forgot to sign them up for swim lessons. And it could be lying in bed at night and thinking, I should have gotten those birthday invites out a couple weeks ago. Are we going to mail them? Are we going to email them? And if you're the lucky person, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about all of these things. So it's just this constant chatter in your mind. It's this invisible workload because it's usually something that doesn't even make it to a to-do list. It just lives rent-free in your head, in your mind constantly, and then becomes something that then you eventually act on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Boy, I think every scenario you walked through, I'm like, yep, this is just a day of my life. So, and I know it impacts a lot of women. So what are some of the physical signs that the mental load is maybe catching up with a woman's body?
Yeah. So if you think back to kind of my experience in the corporate space, it wasn't that this stress kind of happened instantly. It was over time, right? And so our bodies are actually really cool. They can adapt to stress. They can adapt to a certain level of it. But really, that's what it comes down to is this mental load starts to become stressful. And our body will adapt if this is happening for a few days. You know, if you're preparing for a big presentation, your body can handle that. It can gear up. It can get you in front of an audience. You can deliver that presentation. It's going to feel stressful, but then that stress subsides. That stress, your body can even handle stress for weeks at a time, even months at a time. It's pretty cool that it can do that for you. But when you start to compile this mental load year after year after year, now I will tell you, my daughter is 7, my son is 4. So this has been years of working mom mental load that I've been carrying. And over time, your body's not going to be whispering little things to you anymore. It's going to start screaming and it's going to start showing up. The most common ways I see it show up: fatigue, burnout, poor sleep, weight gain, mood swings. I think we've all probably felt these ways because we are women too, right? We have kind of a very complex hormone system happening as well. I mentioned that I run comprehensive lab work. Some of the labs that I do include hormone panels. And I will tell you, stress leaves fingerprints on every single hormone panel that I see come back. And again, I'm not the physician. I'm not the one interpreting the results, but I see the results and they're all unique. They are all personalized, but stress is almost always a part of the equation. And so I'm not saying we can completely escape stress. We live in a modern society. I'm, even as a health coach, I am not, stress occurs for me as well. But I think the difference is knowing when to notice that it's happening and how to kind of turn it off, how to signal to our nervous system that, hey, we're not being chased by a tiger right now. We're just planning a soccer schedule. It's okay. I mean, that's honestly what I was going through. In just this last week, I found myself sitting down at the computer and my daughter has gotten to the point where she's doing multiple sports at once. I told myself we would never do this, but here we are. She's on a competitive dance team. She does gymnastics and she's playing fall soccer. And so here I am trying to put that puzzle piece together of a schedule and figure out where do the classes fit in? How do they balance out with the practices? How do I not overwhelm her too at the same time? And I found myself sitting at the computer for over an hour. I hadn't moved. My breathing was really shallow. I was getting irritated. My husband called me in the middle of it and I snapped at him. I'm like, I can't talk right now. I'm trying to put this together and you don't understand. Yeah. And I realized, okay, my nervous system thinks I'm being chased by a tiger right now. It's okay. And I think that, it starts there. It's noticing when those moments creep up. And then it's just having some really simple tools that can kind of counteract that stress as well so that we aren't living in this state of chronic stress.
Absolutely. And boy, and as soon as you said it, your husband called, I was like, yikes, she snapped, because it's just so relatable in those moments of like, I've had those, for me, I always feel it's like this overwhelm of like all of a sudden these, like you said, that it's just bombarding me. They're in the middle of the night, or it's usually for me in the evening after pickup. And it's just like you said, those emails I didn't respond to, what's the next day, what's for dinner, it just is all at once. And then if someone tries to talk to me, it's like, I'm already at capacity is how I feel. Yeah. And then it's like, nowhere else to go but snapping, right? So it is those, again, excited to get into the tools, but, like you said, it's recognizing it's happening, because I think like what it comes down to, like you mentioned, is just we can't get rid of stress. And I think realizing, like you said, and as humans, right, it's just a natural reaction to living and keeping ourselves alive is that reaction, but does it need to be triggered about creating a schedule or when actually we're, in danger? So I'd love to know, and again, I think you touched on some of this, but why is this such a stubborn, invisible driver of stress for moms specifically?
And you kind of touched on it too, that moment where you snap at your loved one. It's not because you don't love them or you don't care about them. It's like, don't talk to me right now. I'm having a conversation with myself in
There's
my
a
head.
lot going on.
I'm having a team meeting up here, And so I just think that, it goes back to that conversation of stress, that our body can handle a certain load of stress. But when we are holding on to it for too long, it can wreak havoc. So for example, I have a client that I've been working with. She is a nurse. She used to work night shift. She no longer works night shift anymore. She has 2 young kids. But over time, that stress of working night shift, of raising 2 young kids, of just trying to get through the day-to-day, that has showed up for her in very real physical symptoms. For her, primarily, it's in gut health. And so we are working together to kind of unravel that. And I think that, going back to asking about why I care so much about this work and why I want it to be different, is that I think there's also this critical window where if we can learn how to recognize the signs and symptoms of stress, in our body, and we have the tools and the resources to kind of counteract that. It's not a perfect world. It's not like you're going to sit down and meditate for an hour. That's not the solution here. But hopefully, my hope is that we don't get to that point where we are those 80 and 90-year-olds that are very sick, battling chronic diseases. Rather, we have learned how to navigate this thing called life as a working mom, and we get to 80 and 90-year-old, and we get to crawl on the floor with our great grandkids someday, or we get to travel with our husband after retirement, or whatever it may look like for you. Everyone has their own different kinds of dreams, but my goal is that anything that we're doing right now, we're putting these deposits in for our future selves, those decades to come.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. You briefly touched on what does that actually look like? And we're going to get into more habits here in a little bit. But what would you say is one of the biggest misconceptions about self-care that maybe you'd push back on?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I want to say self-care is not selfish. It is necessary, especially for working moms, but it also doesn't have to be bubble baths and hour-long meditations and these luxurious, extravagant morning and bedtime routines. It's just not possible.
Mm-hmm,
as a working mom. I know it's not possible. But maybe you're going into a big presentation or a big meeting, or maybe your toddler is having a tantrum. If you could sit back for a second and take a deep breath in through your mouth and out, or in through your nose and out through your mouth, do that 3 or 4 times. That is all it takes. And that takes less than a minute. Or maybe you do have a working day where you're at your butt in the seat 8 to 5. If you get out of that seat once an hour and do 10 squats every hour over your 8-hour workday, that's more effective than a half an hour walk for your blood sugar. So this doesn't have to be, self-care doesn't have to be this big, time-consuming, luxurious thing. Yes, we would all love to go get a massage in the middle of the week every week, but it's probably not possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's finding those other small things that work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure you have protein in your meals. I know protein's has its day in the sun right now, but for good reason. The science backs it up too. It's not skipping meals. It's nourishing your body. It's breathing. Breathing is free. Breathing is available to us. There's some really simple breath techniques that we can do when we're stuck in traffic on our commute to work or whatever it may be. There's finding that toolbox of resources that work for you. And again, where it goes back to the personalization, is that everyone I work with is different. There are some people that really jive with a meditation routine, and other people that are like, nope, that mental load, that mental chatter, I can't do it. It stresses me out more to sit down and try and do a meditation. Resting feels unproductive, which we could get more into that as well. I guess just to say is that self-care does not have to be this long, luxurious thing. There is a time and a place for that, but I think it can be found in tiny little moments throughout the day as well.
And I would imagine just with my own experience, like as much as just like you said, I love that spa day or that massage, but like that doesn't carry me like through unless I'm doing that, multiple times a week. Like that gets me through like maybe half the week, but I need something more like sustainable and regular on a daily basis than something that, like you said, I'm not going to be able to do every day. So I love the smaller, more intentional moments. And even what you said about the breathing, actually this morning, hormones, absolutely. I'm right in my like start of my PMS cycle, which is just the first couple of days are the worst for me. And I could tell this morning I was getting frustrated with my girls trying to get them out the door because I have meetings, I get them to daycare and we walk. And those, 10 minutes trying to actually physically get out of the door, you know how it is. It's like, I want to change my shoes. It's like whatever reason that we're not leaving. And, I could feel all of it, just like the frustration and, maybe not the best exit. And then while we're walking, I immediately am always like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. Like I can tell it kind of ruined the energy. And I literally told them as we're walking, I was like, we're all going to do deep breaths together because just like you said, I know I need it, but I also know how good it is for them to start, they're 3 and 4 to start like, okay, we're off to a bad start, probably. Energy coming from me, but let's do. And we did the, smell the flowers, both the birthday cake, and we did it together. I don't know how much it did for them, but I already felt better the last minute, before we got there of like, okay, I'm sorry. And I always apologize to them when I do bring that energy, but taking those breaths with my kids in those moments of like, we got to get through this moment and we're doing it together. So I do just love that you said, if your toddler's having a meltdown, it's like, well, let's bring it all. We all need the breath.
Yeah.
So
I love that. I love that real life story and that real life experience. And I would even add to that, it probably helped that you were outside as well. I mean, we cannot underestimate time in nature. And again, I'm not telling you to go forest bathing and just like be in the trees all day long, but like literally being outside probably made a big difference for all of you as well.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
There is one technique that I love with young kids. It's a breathing technique. And if you take your palm and you trace the palm, so as you rise up, actually, you start over at your thumb. As you rise up the thumb, you inhale. You go down the thumb, you exhale. Inhale up the index finger, exhale down, and you move through your fingers. And so by that point, you've gotten 5 deep breaths. And at the end, you run it all the way down your arm. And it's this big release and exhale. And it's one that has really resonated with my daughter. She is big feel. And when I say, all right, we're going to do the palm breathing, the hand breathing, she's like, okay, I can do that. It's something she can do at school. It's something we can do while we're sitting in a meeting. No one knows we're doing it. It's something you can do even when you're having a difficult conversation, as long as you have enough breath to actually have the conversation you're having. But, it doesn't take that long. And I think that having those tools for yourself, like you said, your energy, possibly it could have influenced how everyone else was feeling. And I think that's so wise of you to know that we are in control of our own energy and we are responsible for the energy that we bring into every room. Again, we're not going to be perfect at this, but being able to name a moment of like, yeah, that wasn't my best moment. Let's reset. We can always reset. And here's how I like to do it. Does that work for you? So I think I love that story. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. I'm absolutely going to try that because I think the visual helps everybody, right? Especially kids, but even me to like, okay, focus and turn off that, mental load. And those, like you said, I love the team reference. There's always a team going on. At least it's not just me. There's a team up there.
Yes.
Let's get into stress and energy. And I'm so glad we kind of just started to head that direction because it's, I know, such a huge part of this conversation. But let's start with what chronic stress actually does to a woman's body over time. So you touched on some of that as it related to the mental load, but like, what is that stress? Like you said, now you're with the age of your kids. And obviously there's women that are, teenagers that this has been their reality. What does that actually look like for women?
Yeah, I mean, this is another area where it can be unique to everyone is different. But the most common things that I see, especially in labs, especially lately, I don't know if there's something to this lately, but a lot of it is manifesting in gut health. And our gut health is connected to absolutely everything. It's connected to our hormones. It's connected to our mood and our energy. It's connected to our sleep quality, our digestion, obviously. And so when we just sit in this state of chronic stress, like I said, our body's going to adapt as long as it can. It's going to protect you as long as it can. And then it's going to give up and it's going to say, you know what? I've been protecting you. I'm tired. If you don't protect me, I'm done. And if, I'm not saying like you're going to die from this, but I mean, over time, chronic stress can lead into a chronic disease. It can lead into an autoimmune disease. It can lead into, the things I see most commonly are extreme fatigue. So I'm not talking like we're tired because the baby was up in the middle of the night. I'm talking like we can barely function throughout the day anymore. Like we can't get through the day without an afternoon nap, like extreme fatigue. I'm talking about extreme bloating. So like you are no longer pregnant anymore, but for some reason you look like you're 8 months pregnant. These are the extremes, but it can all be related back to stress. And so it can even cause bladder issues. It can cause mental health issues. And so it's really, really critical that I think we kind of got into this world of society of like glorifying how busy we all are. And life is so busy, life is busy. And it's like, that's not something to celebrate anymore. I think we really need to start celebrating. I rested this weekend, and that rest was productive. And this one is hard for me too, I'll be honest. I grew up in the world of like, you work before play. So if I sit down, I feel like I should be folding laundry if I'm sitting on the couch, I should be doing something. But I think when we can rewire our brains and kind of make that mindset shift that rest is productive, it's going to start kind of counteracting some of those detriments that can be happening inside the body.
Absolutely. Boy, was that everything you just said, especially the rest is productive, is the amount of conversations I have with like girlfriends or, clients or coworkers about exactly that. And like, it's not cool to be busy. Like it's become this like buzzword. And I think like you said, I think it's just our generation, it was just like, that's what we saw or that's what we were taught or what we were told that was, acceptable. And it's, I'm just excited. There's just so many conversations shifting away from that. But like you said, I think it's more unfortunately than a conversation and an actual, change of the way you view rest, right? And productivity and worth.
Right. It's a mindset shift. And when you were talking, it made me think, I try not to say life is busy anymore. But that doesn't mean that my life isn't busy. As I said, I'm an entrepreneur. I have 2 kids. I'm running a business. I'm running a household, all the things. But life is full. And I don't have to do all these things. I get to do these things. So now we're kind of into another mindset shift now, right? It's like, I have to work out. I go to sleep now, I'll get 7 hours. If I fall asleep now, I'll get 6 hours. If you've ever been through that, it's like, I have to.
Yeah.
No, I get to lie in bed in this cozy bed with this roof over my head. I get to move my body. It's a privilege to work out. And this is actually a really personal thing for me too. Even just this week, yesterday actually was my brother's birthday. And so I was thinking about him during my workout when things were getting really hard. I mean, I was grunting through it. I was sweating and I was like, oh, I have to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. And it's like, no. I get to do this. My brother doesn't get to do this anymore. And I know that's really personal for me. It doesn't have to be that deep. But when we shift that conversation from I have to plan the soccer schedule or I have to do this meeting or I have to walk my kids to school. No, I get to do that. I get to live so close to daycare that I can walk them there. Like it's just such a different way of thinking that it seems simple, but it really does start to rewire your brain and tell your nervous system you're safe and turn off the stress. Even though it's still busy, you're still doing the things, but you're doing them with a different outlook.
I absolutely love that. And again, what a beautiful example. And it's that intentionality, right? Of like almost, and I read a book, I dealt with anxiety and recently read a book that talked a lot about like just that you're in control so much more than like we give ourselves credit. So I think that of like, I'm in control of my attitude about this and my perspective, of the stress. I'm in control of how I navigate through it. Because like you said, it's not going to go away. My business is not going to, I don't want it to. Like I said, I get to do this. I get to have my kids. They're not going to slow down. So it's the intentionality and control over how you experience that and realizing you do have control and it's not controlling you, right? And I bet that's a huge part of stress too, is not letting it take over and control, but realizing and recognizing you can control it and how it impacts you.
And I'm glad you brought up control, because that's a big part of coaching too. And my coaching philosophy is we're going to look at the things that you can control, those lifestyle habits. There are genetics we can't control necessarily, but we can control your lifestyle habits. We can control nutrition and movement and sleep and stress to a degree. But these are the things that the levers that you can pull on and that you can adjust and that you can experiment with too, that you get to play around with, trial and try again. But we're always looking at those lifestyle habits that can kind of help move the needle, the things that are within your control, because there's a lot of things that are outside of our control in life too.
Absolutely. What are some of the earlier signs that maybe someone's running on empty, even if she thinks she's fine? Which I think I fall into this category more often than I would like to admit of like, I'm fine. Because I think what you said resonated so much with me of like your body adapts to the amount of stress for a while. So then I think my stress capacity just increases because it just keeps happening. But like, where are those signs of maybe you are running on empty, even though you think you're fine?
Yeah. I think it's some of those same symptoms, but they're showing up. Maybe they're not whispers anymore. Maybe it's like a conversation. It's not quite a scream, but it's not quite a whisper anymore. And so that might be the middle of the night wake ups. So I don't know if you've ever gone to bed wired but tired. Like you're just so exhausted and your head hits the pillow, but then you're wide awake. Your brain, that mental load, it can't turn off. That's part one. That might be a little bit louder than a whisper, but it still might be on the whisper end. But then waking up in the middle of the night, now we're more in conversation world. Like we're not quite screaming, but we're getting closer to that. Like if we're waking up in the middle of the night and making lists and, like tossing and turning and yes, that's going to happen every once in a while. I get it, but it should not be happening consistently. So it's when like we're turning up the volume on those whispers. Sleep fatigue are definitely one of them. If you can't get through your day without having 5 cups of coffee, and we're using that as a crutch, then we're masking an underlying issue there of fatigue. The fatigue is a big one. Brain fog is a big one. Like now all of a sudden, and I see this a lot because I work with women in perimenopause. So what happens with women in perimenopause, there's also a hormonal change happening too. And so we do get to this threshold with stress where like the things we used to be able to handle and the things we used to be able to manage are all of a sudden way too much for us. And we are super irritable about it and we are overwhelmed, but we used to be able to handle it. And so it's kind of this like, well, why can't I keep up anymore? And that's another mindset shift. It's not a comparison game to yourself or anyone else. It's not about you keeping up. It's about protecting your energy and listening. What is my body actually trying to tell me? And if you can't hear it, that's okay. If we need to look at the data, we can do that because your body's trying to tell you something. If you used to be able to do something and you can't do it now, something's shifting, something's changing. Those whispers are getting louder. You're hearing and noticing those things a little more. Then let's look at the data then. Let's see what's happening so that we can make some more informed decisions because if things are getting harder, what you used to do on the positive side of things, maybe your workouts or your food or things that used to always work for you before, maybe even your sleep schedule, that's going to need to adapt with you. And I think that's really hard for women to think, well, this worked for me for however many years. Why can't I just keep doing this? It's because you're changing too. So we've got to change those lifestyle habits with you.
Absolutely. So many great points. And I love even what you said about not comparing to anyone else, but even your former self. Like what a strong statement of like how often, especially, when you become a mom, but then like you said, getting towards perimenopause of like you're hormonally changing, everything happening inside of you. So of course, those expectations have to change. And I always like to think of, and when I'm hard on myself, I always think what if one of my best friends was telling me what they were dealing with? Would I ever treat them the way that I'm treating myself? And it's like the same kind of thing of like, if someone, a child developmentally is going through something changing and you're like, well, why can't, why are you doing it this way? Or, a young child, it's like, just like you said, it's like you're a different person and you're changing and you have to evolve and realizing that that's natural and okay. And, luckily now just so many more conversations about perimenopause, versus I know years prior that, there's resources to help with that as well.
And I think it's the same conversation too in postpartum. That's what happened. There weren't quite as many conversations for me personally, but that was the same conversation I was having with myself postpartum and going back to work and thinking, why can't I do this anymore? I used to be able to handle this. I used to be able to keep up, and I can't do this anymore. That was time for me to step back and really listen to what was going on. How can I protect my energy? And I'm not saying walk away from all the responsibilities in your life. We still have to show up for our responsibilities. And I understand that it's not everyone's world where they can walk away from a job either. But for me, that's what needed to shift. That's what needed to happen.
Absolutely. And can 100% relate to that. And, I've seen studies lately about how many women start businesses or leave their jobs on maternity leave because it's such a huge shift. And, I think you even kind of touched on this too, but also just like priorities when you become a mom. It's just like, for me, it was just like a light switch, and it was like, something's got to change. And it wasn't, one of those, do I look for another job? It was like, I need a dramatic change. Like it needs to be, and I think that just so many women experience that. I think it's empowering and just an incredible thing because of obviously what happens when you become a mom. But just like you said, whatever it is, like acknowledging it and not just thinking, why can't I do or be what I was before, because you now have this incredible, life and a whole new responsibility. Let's get into the energy deposits and withdrawals, because I know this is a conversation again we've kind of like tiptoed around. But can you walk us through that and what that means, and maybe how a mom can start to notice what's maybe draining her versus filling her back up? So let's just get into all things energy deposits and withdrawals.
Definitely. So I think especially as working moms, we spend, and I've even alluded to this myself, we spend so much time at managing our calendars that we kind of forget to manage our energy. And you alluded to that as well, that your energy can influence your kids. It can influence your staff if you have staff that you're working with. It can influence your barista at Starbucks. I mean, the energy that you carry with you, it's palpable and it's tangible. And there are things that we can control when it comes to our energy. And I like to think of this as like a bank account analogy. And so we have things that are energy deposits, and then we have our energy withdrawals. And so think of energy deposits as like the things that are consistently fueling you, or maybe even refueling you, helping you feel more grounded and just a little bit more like yourself. So this could be movement that you enjoy, nourishing meals, a good night's sleep, even just a good laugh, a night out with girlfriends. Again, some of those self-care things sort of, but that are simple, but that you're adding little deposits to your energy. You're fueling yourself and fueling your energy. It's like that idea that, we plug in our phones at night to charge them overnight so that they can work for us the next day. It's like it's the same thing for our bodies. Our energy deposits are our chargers. It could be something as simple as your favorite song or a good book, or if you're really lucky, like a quiet moment, which I know can be few or far between for a working mom. Again, this is personalized. They're different for everyone, but it's those things that fuel you up. And then the opposite are your energy withdrawals. And again, I'm not talking about like walking away from all responsibilities. Many of us probably don't like doing the dishes or the laundry, but like we still have to do them. Those aren't the things I'm talking about. It's things like decision fatigue and clutter and like overcommitting yourself or saying yes to something when you really meant no. It's that like the comparison feelings. Sometimes it's just like the extra. It's the scrolling on your phone maybe before bed, or like the reality TV show. Again, these things might be energy deposits for someone, but they might be energy withdrawals for someone else. It's something that is draining your energy slowly over time, and it's taking more from you than it is giving back. So if this scrolling at night is causing laughter and like bringing you joy and like you're loving that, great. That's an energy deposit for you. But if you're scrolling at night and it becomes this comparison game, like look at them and look at what they're doing, why am I not like that? Like that is a major energy withdrawal. And so if you really like step back and kind of look at your bank account, like, and not with judgment, but just awareness, and kind of ask yourself, wow, like, am I living paycheck to paycheck, or am I saving up, or am I living in the red? And that kind of brings the conversation back to longevity of like, what kind of deposits am I putting in for myself so that I can live these vibrant, healthy years, as opposed to, or am I going to end up of those people that are really struggling and chronic disease and chronic stress and things of that sort. And so I think that's a really nice like visual way to look at. I think it kind of also answers your question, like, how do you know? How do we know if we're running on empty? Well, like, think of your life as a bank account. And I'm not talking your physical bank account. I'm not talking financials here, because that could be a world of stress too. I get that. But I'm talking about your energy bank account. Like how, and not to judge it, not to be like, gosh, I should be doing better. I should. It's like, no, just where am I at? And I think it's like looking at that and maybe starting with the withdrawal side and see like, what's one thing I can let go of? Like channel your inner Elsa and just let it go. Like, what's one thing I can take off my calendar? Or what's one thing that, like, I did say yes to, but I actually meant no. I'm going to go actually say no to that. You know, I think that's a really great place to start, and just one thing. One thing. Or maybe it's starting by, like, making the list. What are the things that are my deposits? What are the things that are my withdrawals? So that you're aware of them and that you can notice them, like just starting by making a list. That can be really helpful too. I know a lot of us as working moms, we can be list people. So if that's you, that can be helpful. And then the next step, after you've made the list, you walk away from it, you don't judge it, you're just aware. Then you come back to the list and then you start crossing off the list. Like, all right, I'm taking this one away. I'm taking this one away. Or on the deposit side, I'm going to do more of this. But it's not necessarily like adding more to your to-do list. It's just finding the space for the things that really matter, so that you have the energy to show up for the things that matter, that you have the energy to do, again, going back to like, you have the energy to do the things you love with the people you love, because you're working so hard to build that life.
Absolutely. I love that so much. I'm all about an analogy. Like that's how I think like things click in my brain. And I know a lot of people, and especially for it to be like tangible, because, you know, these are all like ideas, right? And then it's so hard to actually put it into practice without like tangible, you know, ways to do that. And it reminds me, and I didn't think about this until as you were saying it, I went on a girls' trip a couple of weeks ago with my best friends from college. We all between us have like 17 kids. We hadn't all been together since before we had kids. And we went to Nashville on a girls' trip. And when I tell you, and it almost makes you want to tear up thinking about, like, I felt like a different person since I got back. Like it felt like the biggest, like, you know, plug your phone in at night and then, I don't know, like get a new phone. Like it was like a new battery, you know, like it was so like, I mean, the energy I had like those couple weeks after of like for my business, for my, like just confidence. And like, just because this was such a huge, I work from home, I don't have an office. So I'm also, an extrovert. So I don't get a lot of the energy from other people that I need. So I almost felt like this is perfect, like 4 days of like filling up this tank that I think I realized I run too low. And I felt like so alive after that. So it's and it was cool because it was, again, that is more of a dramatic than like a, you know, thing here or there. But for me, it made me realize like I work from home, I work for myself. I need to be intentional about doing, even if it's a couple bigger things a year, but like I got so filled up, and what can I find regularly, but like also to find places to do that more, because it was just wild how different I felt after, you know, kind of a tougher year mental health wise for me. So I can just so relate of, again, I didn't realize I was depleted until I was like filled up again. It was like, oh my goodness, I'm a different person.
Yeah. So if you're listening, this is your sign. Go book the girls' trip. If you're not the friend that likes to be the one to book it, you know, the friend in your group, you text her today and you say, all right, get a date on the calendar. Again, because it doesn't have to be this big thing all the time, but even sometimes an energy deposit is just getting the date on the calendar. You did it. You have something to look forward to. You have the next joyful thing that's coming up, and that can fill you up too. Just the act of like planning it, like getting ready for it. So that's great.
Absolutely. Or even, you know, what you talked about too was just people. Like I definitely have noticed there's energy deposits with certain people that I spend time with. And then obviously there's energy withdrawals. And like those are people that deposit so much energy. And I feel so comfortable to be, you know, myself and all the things of, you know, the mental load and everything that, you know, so I think that also helps, but also realizing if there's people that withdraw that energy that, just like you said, I loved the like saying yes to things you should have said no to just, again, just being aware of those things and taking control where you can is what I took, again, a lot of what you were saying. Let's get into habits here before we head into wrapping up. But obviously we've talked about all these kind of little things, but what if a mom only has 10 minutes to invest in her health? Where would you tell her to spend it?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things here, right? Like maybe you have 10 minutes today. Make that list. Make that list of your energy deposits and your energy withdrawals. That's one way you could spend 10 minutes. Another one I shared earlier are the 10 squats every hour over 8 hours. You don't need a half an hour walk. I love a half an hour walk. I don't always have time for that. But if I can get my butt up out of the seat and I do 10 squats, it takes me less than a minute. And I do that 8 times a day. That's only 8 minutes of your day.
And 80 squats. That's so good.
Right? And it's so good for your blood sugar. It gets things flowing. It gets, it's wonderful. 10 minutes a day. Maybe you're the person that needs the rest. And so, but maybe rest doesn't have to look like a nap. It doesn't have to look like a meditation. Rest could be getting down on the floor and stretching, moving, especially if you've been sitting at a desk all day and you've been hunched over. Like open up your chest, reach towards the sky, stretch down towards your legs, stand up, like whatever your body allows you to do. I'm not saying like push it, but, a stretch or just a short walk, a 10-minute walk can still do a lot for you as well. Or maybe you need to turn off your crazy chatter, not crazy, but your chatter in your mind, open up a book, and better yet, open up, a fictional book, somewhere that you can just like escape to and get a story for 10 minutes. Maybe that's for you, or maybe it's a story with your kid. I don't know. Again, these are just like brainstorming ideas for whatever it is that you're feeling that you need in the moment. Like maybe you're feeling more energetic. Maybe you do need the movement. Maybe you're feeling drained and depleted. Maybe you need the rest. Food is another good one. If you have 10 minutes, you could make little smoothie bags. You could chop and wash some vegetables and some fruits. I know we're all really interested in washing our produce right now.
Especially right now.
So just spend 10 minutes washing that stuff so that it's done. So then when you are hungry or reaching for something, you can grab something fresh instead of the chips. And again, chips aren't good or bad, right or wrong. It's just having access to real whole foods is really going to be more of an energy deposit for you. So if you can deposit 10 minutes into prepping something for yourself, that can go a long way as well.
I love that. And just like you said, it's not going to always be the same thing. It's not going to be the same thing for each woman, but even just what you listed, and I don't even know how many there were, but like various ideas for, depending on what you need in that moment to kind of have that. What's maybe a small shift you've seen making the biggest difference for women that you work with?
Small shift making big difference. This is like totally my language. That is such a powerful question, because I think that I work with a lot of women that are like all or nothing. Well, okay, I'm going to do the workouts. I'm going to do everything you just said. All 10 things, I'm doing them all. And it's like, we get a lot of like all or nothing mentality. I myself am that way as well. But I think that picking one thing, one small thing, and nailing that before moving on to the next thing. So maybe that one small thing today is writing the list before moving on to like actually impacting the list. That's what makes a bigger impact, is a bunch of small, tiny things over time add up to bigger change in the end. So, again, it depends on who I'm working with and what they're working on. I talk a lot about meal planning and meal prepping with women. And so again, it's not like, okay, go plan a whole week's worth of meals, prep all of them on Sunday, spend 4 hours in your kitchen. That's not it. It's spend 10 minutes in your kitchen this weekend, washing and chopping some produce. Call it good for the week. See how that changes things. Then next week, maybe while you're doing that, you make some hard-boiled eggs. You don't have to tend to those at the same time. And so you learn how we can adapt in that way. As working moms, we can multitask to an extent. But we don't want too many tabs open. We already have all those tabs open in our heads. The smaller and the easier we can make it for ourselves, and then layering on, that's what makes the big change.
I love that, especially as a fellow all or nothing. It's like, well, if we're going to meal prep, we're doing all the meals and it's going to be all done on Sunday. And I had this conversation with my husband a couple months ago. Like, we're going to do, guess what? Ordered the food, didn't meal prep. So I love the okay, let's start with, like you said, fresh veggies and fruit, and then we'll move on to like lunches, and then maybe, in each gradually rather than going, because and it makes sense. Like, of course, that big change of something I've never done before. I'm not going to cook 4 hours on a Sunday. Like, realistically, is that, again, setting realistic expectations for myself and others. So I really almost it just made me think baby steps, right? It's any step towards that is rather than just jumping all the way.
That's what made me think of it too, is your child didn't just learn how to walk in one day. They took a couple steps and fell down, and then they got up and they tried again. It's this trial and try again. It's not something that we can perfect right away on the first try. We can't expect that of ourselves. We don't expect that of our kids. We can't expect it of ourselves either. But we take little baby steps, and all of a sudden we're walking and then we're running. But you have to start somewhere.
Absolutely. I love that so much. How do you help women build habits that stick when life is already full? I'm sure the baby steps is a big part of that, but what does that look like when, and I love that you kind of started to say it, or you said it on the last question, but adding that is well, my mental load, this is why we're here, is my mental load is already full. So what does that look like to form new habits when they maybe already have unlimited tabs open?
So I'm always asking, how important is this to you on a scale of 1 to 10? And if it's less than, sometimes if it's less than a 7, but definitely if it's less than a 6, we're probably not going to see it through. This might not be the thing that we start with because this isn't important enough to you. So we also always start with the bigger vision in mind. So if you look ahead, however far you want to look, 10, 20 years, maybe 5 years, what's your bigger vision? Where do you want to be? Why do you care about your health? Why is your health important to you? For me, I want to grow old and be able to walk the cobblestone streets of Italy and travel with my husband someday and be able to actually walk and not be in a wheelchair or whatever. I want to be crawling around on the floor with my my grandkids and my great grandkids, hopefully, and I want to be able to play. I want to have that vibrancy. And I know that the things I'm doing now, the deposits I'm putting in now are helping me get to that bigger vision. That's what makes it important to me. And so, but when things get hard, in that workout yesterday, I sometimes have to go there. I sometimes have to say I got to do these 10 more burpees because that's how, when I'm older, I can get down on the floor and get back up. And so sometimes it really is honing in on why this is important. Why does this even matter to you? How important is it? And how confident are you in your ability to see it through? That's kind of the second layer, because if our confidence level is really low, then the goal that we're setting for ourselves is probably too big. We might need to dial back and start smaller so that you can see some of these wins along the way and then build up from there. So it's really a combo of importance and confidence that I'm looking at.
I love that. In both being so important, not to continue to use the word, but I love, and I'm going to start using that. How important is this? Is it I love the 7. I think you're going to say 5. And the fact that you went 7, I'm yes, that is truly, is this important?
Yeah.
And then realistic, it sounds like, is this, part of that second one of because what worse than to get started in a new habit and to fail immediately to set you back. So I love the is this actually, how confident am I can do this? Because if not, then it's just this, thing I'm spending a blip of time on and then I actually can't sustain. So what a great
Because that's why something might work for your friend that doesn't work for you, because you are two different human beings with two different demands. You might have, it might look on paper like you live similar lives, but you're very different. And so if it's not doable and you're not confident in your ability and it's not realistic, it's not going to stick. And you will fail at it. You will get frustrated and you will give up. And the importance all of a sudden doesn't matter anymore because you're just beaten down.
Yeah, absolutely. Both are equally important. Okay, we're going to start some wrap-up questions here. So these are going to be a little bigger questions. So what would you say to the mom who maybe knows she needs to start taking care of herself but genuinely can't figure out where to start, which I'm sure a lot of women have been in this spot?
Yes. I see you. I was you. I am you at times. I would say get off the internet, or if you are on the internet, come find me. Let's chat. I am here for you. even it doesn't need to be this big commitment. It can just be someone meeting you where you're at and kind of assessing, maybe you do need some extra support at this time. And here are some options for support. I think that can be really hard for us as women. And this was a big learning experience I had coming into motherhood too, is that it's okay to ask for help. And prior to motherhood, I was like, nope, I'm going to do it all on my own. And if I do it, it's going to be done right. And it's going to be done the best and all this stuff. And it was like, relatable. All of a sudden, I could not do that anymore. And so, sometimes you just need to stop looking for the answer online and, find a trusted resource, whether it's someone like me, whether it's a doctor, whether it's a friend. Start with a conversation and just talk about it, because there are a lot of resources out there and ways that we can direct you in the right direction.
Absolutely. And we will be linking all of Kelsey, her website, her socials. So literally go follow. I mean, and again, I wish we need to record again, because I think there's just so much more content too that we could get into. But okay, I have one more question for you, Kelsey. How do you help women stop feeling guilt? Mindset shifts that maybe you help teach women from feeling that guilt and overwhelm and more towards self-compassion.
Yeah. This goes back to that larger vision. And I will tell you, every woman that I ask them to describe to me their bigger vision for life, it almost always includes the people that they love. It's not this selfish thing like, I want to live to 100 so I can be by myself. Like, no, it's like they have these real descriptive visions for what they want long term. So that makes the self-care or the self-work or any deposit that you're putting in now, it makes more sense for that because you have that long-term vision in mind. And I will tell you, there are some clients that I work with where they haven't really thought about that bigger vision. It is kind of like pulling teeth, getting that out of them. Like, well, what do you want? What is important? What do you care about? And we get there. We definitely get there. But I think that is what helps women realize, like, it's okay to take care of me. And in fact, I need to take care of me. I mean, we could go back to another metaphor of like, you have to put your oxygen mask on first if you want to take care of everyone else. You need to have your own energy, protect your own energy so that you can show up for this life that you're building. And all of a sudden, it doesn't feel selfish anymore. It doesn't feel guilty. And I know, at the time of this recording, it's August, it's summer, it's busy, but it also that back to school energy is starting to creep in too. And, regardless of what stage of motherhood you're at, if you happen to be at that stage where the kids are going back to school, that might be the time where you kind of take a step back and realize, okay, I have a little bit of space. Let's take care of me too. And if that's not the case for you, if kids are not going back to school, you can still do that too. You have permission to take care of yourself because your bigger vision includes those people that you love. I know it does.
How wonderfully stated. And I always say, fill my own cup before I can fill others. And it's just like you said, it's just any sort of energy. If you're expelling it, you got to refill those reserves, the deposits and withdrawals. So what an incredible ending to that. Kelsey, thank you so much for being here. I thoroughly learned so much and just such an awesome conversation. And I just really appreciate you taking the time to chat and sharing all your wisdom with our listeners. And like I said, I'll make sure to link your website, your socials, and how people can follow and connect with you.
I appreciate that so much. Like I said, my goal is for women to stop guessing what's going on in their bodies, really understand what's happening, and feel empowered to step into taking care of themselves so that they can take care of others and really enjoy this life that we're all working so hard to build. Hats off to all the working moms out there. You guys are doing a great job. I see you. I am you. Let's chat. I'd love to continue the conversation however that feels comfortable.
Amazing. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Roots and Realities.